presidents to represent me. Yeah. I'm out for presidents to represent me. Yeah. I'm out for presidents to represent me. Yeah. I'm out for every presidents to represent me.
Yeah. I was feeling pretty good about my country till Donald Trump come and tried to steal my lunch meat. Now I'm skipping school, afraid he's gonna punch me. A real life bully, I hope he falls into pose. But he's so damn rich, I bet he'll buy out the Pope. Wealth inequality's growing out of control, but the Koch brothers conquer, they're coming after your vote. Thought you should know that the planet's getting hotter, and that's just sad to see. Gunmen running into schools, that's a tragedy. Black lives matter, well all lives actually, but black lives matter more. Police catastrophes and all that new income, man, it's going to the richest. Top 1% so that they can build their business. The rich, they tend to win this game of life because they rigged it. Their money's in the politics, it's sickening. I'm not done. Trump and the Republicans are so out of touch. They insist on playing tackle while the country's playing touch. Like when it comes to healthcare, they can never spare a buck, but when it's military, man, they cannot spend enough. Bernie Sanders, on the other hand, probably should be knighted, standing up to billionaires and citizens united, and taking money out of politics. I'm super glad that Bernie Sanders raised his 26 mil without a super PAC. In fact, Bernie voted no to the Patriot Act. In fact, Bernie voted no to war in Iraq. In fact, Bernie voted no to personal attacks. He wants to break up banks and legalize the dank, and Bernie wants to ban that old death penalty. If murder is illegal, why should murder be the penalty? And who the fuck cares that the man is like 74? He supported gay rights since the 70s. A democratic socialist is the remedy, and Donald Trump is the fucking enemy.
Well, I guess Donald Trump isn't exactly the enemy. The influence that big money has on politics is the real enemy.
Every presidents to represent me. Every presidents to represent me. Every presidents to represent me. Every presidents to represent me.
Hello, and welcome to another show, another Project Sanity show. Today we will be talking about Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, what's going on in the California primary, and we will be talking about how it's like to be a national delegate, what you need to prepare yourself for, and we'll be talking about the aftermath of the political election. What do we do after the election is over, no matter who wins? With me today, as always, is my partner, Richard, Progressive Greens. He will be doing the news for us today, and us as well as joining me in the deep dive to discuss about the framing and the narrative that the Democratic Party has created in the past and has created this election cycle. Also joining us is yet again Feel the Burn TV, Dave Coennen, who has put together yet another information package about the California primary for us. We are really looking forward to seeing that and showing it to you, and starting the discussion and the march back to sanity in the media and the dialogue of not just the United States, but hopefully the West at large. So, Richard, are you ready to start bringing us some of the news that's been happening today? I hear there's some great news or not great news, but there are some big news about Rikers Island.
Yes, absolutely. I got quite a bit here for us to digest, and still sorting out some other things on the back end of production, but as far as our news goes, we did have some big news out of Rikers, and then one of the things I wanted to start with was that Obama has come out basically in support of expanding Social Security, and in support or basically against the budget that he proposed, where he was going to link and change the link of Social Security from the current inflation adjustment that they were using to change CPI. And without going too deeply into the how the economics of it all functions, essentially what they do is they take a basket of goods and they say how much would it cost to fill this basket of goods, including rent, food, childcare, or depending on what you're what kind of person you're dealing with. They look at different particular sets of goods, and depending on the type of index that you're using. There's the traditional CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, and then there's the chain CPI, which, without again going into too much detail, basically the difference there lies in that when they're looking at the basket of goods, they're making assumptions about the behavior, their economic behavior of the citizen, saying that essentially if beef prices start to go up and it becomes more expensive to buy beef, that rather than adjust for that inflation and compensate you with more money, they make an adjustment where, oh, well, we're going to assume that people are going to buy more chicken instead, and so chicken's going to be, if chicken's cheaper, then they're going to buy more chicken, and so we don't need to necessarily raise it or raise it as much as if as you were doing it the traditional way, where you looked at that basket of goods more generically. And so that difference essentially would have resulted in seemingly small differences at first. You know, a few, like depending on how much Social Security you're getting. If you're getting about 660, I believe that they figured that the first year that would be that you'd be getting shorted about $3. I want to say $3. The report is out on the Intercept, and due to some screen restrictions here, I'm unable to keep so many things up at once. But looking at it, I can pull that statistic for us here, and essentially, it was actually the statistic I'm mentioning is from AARP. And they basically came out against what Obama had proposed in his budget deal, which was, again, changing over to CPI. So essentially what this boils down to is that senior citizens, as a result of that being dropped, will continue to get the inflation, although I basically have some really strong objections to how they're currently calculating it. And there's really no way to get into it without taking probably about 20, 30 minutes just going on to the CPI and all that. So I'll suppress that urge and move on with the story. Basically, since Obama has moved forward and come out in support of it, Hillary Clinton has also come out in support of it. If we all remember back when Obama was campaigning, he said he would never cut Social Security, that he would fight to expand it. In reality, his budget proposal was essentially a cut to Social Security, and the way that they're able to get around it is by saying, oh, they had to, you know, this is what we could get passed with a Republican Congress, and that might sound familiar, as in from a progressive who likes to get stuff done. So if that's what you're looking at, then what you're likely to see is Hillary Clinton to come out and say that she wants to expand Social Security and do those things, but only if there's somebody there pressuring her will she do that, and not likely follow what President Obama was trying to do with essentially cutting Social Security. And that especially affects disabled children who would see their benefits cut dramatically over the lifespan. So AARP did some calculations with a 66-year-old. If they lived to 92, by the time that they were 92, they would be missing a complete month of payments and equivalents that they had lost just due to this CPI change. So those that are familiar with compound interest and stuff will be familiar with the idea that these small 1% to 2% interests getting cut out of the person's Social Security check looks small on their thing for the first few times, but as it adds up, and like I mentioned, 30 years down the road, it adds up to being significantly more. And so one of the other stories that we want, and now Obama again, and so they're claiming that they're going to be pushing towards this way, and so hopefully that's how that follows through. So keep up on that.
Who fought that fight back in 2014? Who fought that fight and helped him make the right decision here?
Yes, I almost forgot, and that the reason, and I just assume that we're all familiar, but the person that was been pushing him this whole time was Bernie Sanders, as is noted in the article, and that it was Bernie Sanders, and that it was getting polled. They were, as a result of him pushing for increasing Social Security and being so adamant about it, and challenging Hillary Clinton, to which she eventually responded in tweet form about whether she would go on record as saying she would expand Social Security, not cut it. And in that process, they also pressured Obama, and they ran some polls on it, and it turned out it was polling extremely well, and that they couldn't sell what they were trying to do. And essentially what it boiled down to in Congress and the Senate was he couldn't get enough Democrats on board because they didn't want to pay the political cost that would come with it. And one of the things is it's in basic principle being that, oh, well, you know, if we save a little bit off of each Social Security check, we're talking of billions of dollars over 10 years. And that goes a long way in appeasing Republicans as far as giving them something to give their base to say, hey, we did this, we're saving the government this many $1 billion. And I think it's important to remember that there's other people on the side of those checks, and you're talking about senior citizens who live in modest homes and are just trying to survive. And I want to live in a society that takes care of all of us, regardless of whether we're successful in life or not. That we make sure that we try to give humans or each other as much opportunity to have a basic level of existence in this country, so long as we're not going to be a bit more global. Anyway, another headline I wanted to mention was the FBI now wants to basically exempt massive biometric the massive biometric database from the Privacy Act. Ava Kaufman wrote on The Intercept. It's a great story, so make sure to check it out if you can. And basically, there was a bunch of signatories that came on board and wanted to say that essentially if agencies and groups are collecting facial recognition, fingerprint identification, DNA profiles, all sorts of all sorts of other biometric identifiers, that they have to inform the people that they're collecting it on. And as of right now, there's a massive discrepancy between the people that they're doing this to and the people that are aware, and then also the amount of them that are actually criminal, and that these organizations have legal jurisdiction to be able to essentially do this. And the FBI is basically trying to just nip the impending, what would be an impending court case in the bud by exempting it from this law. And so when essentially what they're doing is they're saying they got over 70 million criminal records, 38 million civil records, and a lot of these are misidentified or they're not accurate. And essentially the FBI has been allowing publicly saying allowing a 20% error rate. So people are getting associated with things that they're not associated with, and all sorts of other, like, when you do something like that, you can, and most of us I think can imagine trying to manage that much data, what it would look like scanning, millions of faces, millions of fingerprints, and trying to link them all together and then tie them to other information, and how easily that could get completely mixed up and be inaccurate. Anybody who's ever managed or even just went to an agency that had to do that has realized it. You can never cease to be amazed at how bumbling sometimes the process can be. And so when you're talking about stuff like this,
just look at the Bureau for Veteran Affairs.
Yes, that's
how many
excellent.
billions have you guys thrown at that department so far in trying to just digitize it, like just to get it go digital, and it's still not digital.
Yes, the VA still has equipment from the 70s and 80s, and much issue is that one software program can't communicate with another software program because the OSs are so different, and there's just so many other different parts that it's a total mess, and it's going to take billions of dollars to fix, and nobody wants to do it. Not unless they can make sure that those billions of dollars get channeled into.
They threw billions of dollars at it, and it's still not fixed.
Well, because they didn't go. The billions of dollars had nothing to do with fixing it. The billions of dollars was mostly a band. It was like 90%. It was significantly a band-aid. I don't want to put a percentage on it, but it was mostly a band-aid. In that it was to address the immediate problems of people literally dying while waiting to just get callbacks and things like that. And so that was the primary function of that bill, while that was still also one of the biggest and most comprehensive steps that they've taken to improve those other issues. That was still only a very minor portion of it. And so it's devastating and dehumanizing what we do to our veterans, and it's unfortunate that our congresspeople and our senators are so caught up in a back and forth over schoolyard type stuff that they say that they constantly love the veterans and that they respect the veterans and they want to thank them for their service, until that means taking care of them when they get home. And at that point, it's where's the budget? Just like the 9/11 people, the responders, first responders, who it took a ridiculous amount of effort, including Jon Stewart pushing it over the edge, as far as, and people literally dying while waiting for them to act. That it took that long and that much effort just to do what we like. Nobody would say, oh, well, about the people that responded to 9/11, how do you think they're doing? Oh, I'm sure they're taken care of. They got big insurance claims, I'm sure. And no, they're struggling to stay alive, and it was only through a dramatic effort that happened. So we really could take a closer look at what we're doing with our veterans and be much better citizens and much better representatives of our citizens, I think, when it comes to how we treat veterans. And I know stopping sending them from war would go to unnecessary wars would go a long way as well. And so, without getting too aside on that, the last one I did want to mention was, like you said at the top of the show, was at Rikers Island. Some of our viewers, I'm sure, are familiar with Rikers Island and some of the many stories that have come out of there. It's reasonably well known that a significant portion of the people that are there as a result of waiting for trial. There's some statistics posted in the actual. Sorry, excuse me. Okay. Yep. There's. It looks like we actually. It looks like we had a comment from a BS Opinion mentioning he had some inside info on Rikers Island, funny enough, and that they are instituting a prisoner grievance board pilot program, which I'm sure the story will help provide some context to, in that essentially of the people that are in Rikers right now, about 85% of the 10,000 are awaiting trial. So they're in Rikers, which is, again, if you're familiar with it, if not, go ahead and look it up, that it's notoriously not a nice place to hang out. So for those people that are awaiting trial and are yet to be convicted, now many of them there's a reasonable amount of suspicion, so it's not as if that it's totally unjust that they're all there, but that so many people are awaiting trial is a result of a much larger issue that goes into, this article is pretty long and it goes into more detail about how the backlog in the courts has a lot to do with why people are in there, but then the backlog of the courts also has a lot to do with how we're policing people and for what reasons they end up in these prisons or jails and in the court system in general, and why certain cases are more attractive for people to resolve than other cases, and how that influences what gets resolved. So anyway, but of the inmates that are in there, said 85% are there waiting trial, but of those that are awaiting trial, about 75% of them have been there less than a year. Now, less than a year sounds not so bad, but I mean, 6 months in prison, and especially Rikers Island, for something that you may or may not have been convicted, or may or may not be convicted of, I'm sure feels like a lifetime. And as most people that have been to prison and have come out and reformed themselves talk about, one of the hardest things is, basically what is PTSD that they develop in prison, because the way that they live there in many prisons, especially high security prisons that hold some of the toughest criminals, the most violent, and so on and so forth, those places, the way that life is conducted in there is, I'm sure if any of you have probably seen the nonstop lockdown episodes on MSNBC, that gives you a little bit of a peek into what that looks like. But obviously that's still rather sanitized for television and then also dramatized for television. But what's going on there is pretty intense. And so essentially there's a gentleman in there, and the article is about his mom, I believe it's his mother, who has basically mortgaged her house, gone $100,000 in debt to try and get through this process. He's been in there for 6 years waiting trial. 6 years. They think that he's currently the longest serving person there. And so he's been in there 6 years and still waiting for trial. Basically what happened was he stabbed somebody in what was claimed as self-defense, another graffiti artist, and he turned himself in to the police. When he turned himself in, he was diagnosed for bipolar disorder a few days later or whatever, and they put him in they had him institutionalized for a couple weeks, and then after a couple weeks of being institutionalized, they sent him to Rikers, and that's where he's been for the last 5+ years. And basically all of his family and friends are saying that it's basically destroying his mind. Between the medication that they have him on in there and just being there, that he comes off as a zombie. It's a really great piece, and it's long, so in-depth, and so get to it when you get a chance. I think what we have coming up next, though, is some great information out of California from Dave. And if Nis wants to talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so next up, we have a piece that Dave Coennen, Field of Burn TV, has put together for us about the California primary. And right after that, we will be joined by Laura Steiner. Lauren Steiner from Los Angeles. She's part of an independent group of people in the greater Los Angeles area that are working to make Bernie Sanders the next president. So we're really looking forward to talking with her. But first, we have this video, this yet another package from Field of Burn TV that we are really happy to be presenting to you.
And I'm just getting that up for us now.
Okay. So if you want to present something for us, or if you want to contribute in any way to us, in the video description, there are links that can lead you to Google's submission form, in which you can put in links of articles, studies, or whatever you find interesting, both old and new, that would make for a good show, a good deep dive, or something that needs to be brought to the attention that includes community reporting and local news. So if you in any way want to temporarily contribute, just use those forms. If you want to contribute in a more permanent way, you can find us in our G+ community, which is also linked down there, or you can contact me at Scandinavia, or Richard Green at Progressive Green on Twitter, or find us on Facebook and reach out to us, and we will see about bringing you in. We had actually hoped that a person that we were bringing in slowly would have been here today to talk about being a national delegate, but unfortunately he was unable to come today. We also have Phil Wynter, who is continuously feeding us articles through the submission forms, who simply started following us on Twitter and sending articles on Twitter with the hashtag Project Sanity, or directly at us. And that's simply how we notice him, and we have established a working relationship in which he helps us do some research.